First, are the Extinction Rebellion protesters heroes or villains? A two-week climate change rally in London began yesterday. Protesters chained themselves to a 4-metre-high pink table, which was built in London's Leicester Square. Now, campaigners held placards with messages including "Code Red, where's the action?" Police arrested 8 people yesterday, but there are more protests planned. Now, it's brought parts of England's capital to a standstill. But Carol, heroes or villains?
Oh, my book, villains here. This is a bunch of white, middle-class, privately educated tattler types who are having a temper tantrum about climate change. This isn't a serious green movement. This is a doomsday cult. You know, they have no plan to save the planet. What they do is their leader, what's he called, Roger Hallam, he says, "I look at the sky and I see death." And that's what the followers do. They predict, you know, they predicted last year that the end of the world was going to happen in 12 years. Totally disputed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who says it's rubbish, and it also disputes their claims about...
Well, so I think somebody might dispute your claim. Is someone joining us now? This is Zoe Cohen, who's from Extinction Rebellion. Zoe, what do you want to say? You've heard what Carol's had to say, and I believe you're on your way to a protest later.
Hi, Trisha. Hi, Carol. Hi, Matt. Good to meet you all. Yes, I'll be joining the protests again later on today. I guess I feel really sad that these conversations turn into this kind of adversarial culture war thing. What we're talking about here is so much more important. You know, that report that I think Carol might have been referring to earlier, that came out a couple of weeks ago, from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is all the world's leading scientists, and it's signed off by every government on Earth. They go through every line with all the latest science from the last 7 years, and they're really clear. You know, it's happening now, it's incontrovertible, it's human-caused, and it's only going to get worse for decades. Because, Carol, can I finish, please? Of course. I'm sorry, I really do need to finish. This is so important.
Yes, of course.
It's happening now, and we're going to hit 1.5 degrees, that
But can I just ask you,
level that we were really trying to avoid, but we're going to hit that in the next 20 years, whatever we do now. And that's
Zoe, can I just ask you, Zoe, sorry, because we're always dealing with limited time, but can I just ask you, what is the aim of these protests?
What's your plan?
What's the plan? What's the aim? Why?
Why?
No, well, why. What's your plan? What's your plan to save the planet? The volume's a little bit
low here, so I'm struggling to hear every word. But,
what's your plan? Why are you doing this? What are you hoping to achieve?
We're doing this to, again, raise awareness, to invite everyone who can and is interested to come and join us. As it says, come to the table, come to those crisis talks, because really our government needs to be involving ordinary people across the country in a citizens' assembly, which is our third demand, and they're failing to do that engagement. And it's that engagement that even the Committee on Climate Change has been saying they really need to do, and they're not doing it. So we want people to come and engage with us in conversation, but also really important.
Zoe, can I ask why you need to? Why do you need to do that in the middle? Because we're looking at pictures as well. Why do you need to do that, say, in areas that shut the city down and affect people?
Well, we haven't shut the city down. We've done a minor amount of disruption in one part of the West End. Let's get it in perspective. But we have to do that because the conversation doesn't happen in the media unless we do stuff like that. Unfortunately, that's the case. I wish we didn't need to do it, but we do. And what we need to get across is that
is this a monologue for you, Zoe?
Okay, just a minute. We've got...
I haven't said anything.
This lady is talking like the government are doing nothing. You know, we're one of the first countries to commit to zero carbon emissions by 2050. Your group wants it to happen by 2025. It can't happen, and you know that because there is no alternative form of energy. And if we are carbon-free by 2025, there is no heating, there is no light, there is no aviation, there is no cars, there is no haulage. You would have us taken back to the dark ages, and you still haven't told us your plan. You keep on saying get people round the table. The government is talking about climate change.
Let Zoe answer.
We all know there's a problem.
Okay, let Zoe answer that.
Thank you, Trisha. I'm noticing you're sounding quite angry, Carol, and I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm noticing you aren't answering questions, and that's patronising. Answer the questions.
I will if you let me and give me enough time to.
On you go.
So we have a very, very clear immediate demand. The government needs to stop making things worse. Currently, they're doing lots and lots of things that are making the situation an awful lot worse. And one of those is still funding new fossil fuels. So our immediate demand is for government, corporations and banks to stop all new fossil fuel funding now. It's a no-brainer. And it's not just us, Extinction Rebellion, saying this. It's also the International Energy Agency. They're not activists. They're the Global Energy Agency. And they are saying we cannot afford any new fossil fuel projects. End of.
Zoe, thank you so much. I wish we did have more time, but thank you so much for that. And that does answer Carol's question somewhat. Matt?
Yeah, I haven't said anything yet.
Matt hasn't said anything. Yes.
I support Zoe in what she's trying to achieve.
Right.
And I'll give you a very, very simple explanation as to why. When I was hosting my LBC show for 4 years,
right,
it was very difficult to talk about climate change because it didn't seem very sexy.
Yeah.
It certainly seemed important, but how did you talk about it? How did you make sure that something that should really, if we're talking about priorities, be a news headline every single day of the week because it's the biggest single threat to humanity, to Carol, to me, to you, to Storm, to everyone. How do you make sure that your audience actually wants to talk about it? And I tell you, my job was made so much easier when Extinction Rebellion caused some disruption, because suddenly you were suddenly able to talk about it. And the message, you say, what's the plan? Look, I'm not sure that what Zoe is trying to achieve is necessarily particularly realistic, but it is really important to have people making their voices heard, because as she quite rightly said, a UN report, the IPCC, reported earlier this month that it is code red for humanity.
Yes.
And if you just remember, in 2015, almost every nation on earth signed up to the Paris Accord. Trump tried to pull America out of that, or did briefly. And what that committed to is trying to keep temperatures, as Zoe said, below 1.5 degrees increase. And that is going to to be reached, whatever we do, by 2040. This is urgent. It is a clear and present danger.
Let's take some calls. Storm, what are people saying about this?
Well, some people think Extinction Rebellion are villains, and one of those people is Natalie from Essex.
Natalie, good morning. You think Extinction Rebellion are villains. Why?
Hiya, panel. Yes, I do. I think they're distracting a lot of things in London, stopping people getting through to work. I've only seen a little bit on the news. I haven't seen it so much as like a few years ago when they were standing on the tubes and stopping people getting to work. Yeah. I think the government are trying really hard to reduce to the lower emissions as it is. Yeah. And if the Extinction Rebellion group really want to make a change, they should maybe target the Chinese embassy and glue themselves to the railings there. But I just think they've taken the police out of their local communities who want to support the communities they're usually in, and I'm not sure if it's costing £15 million to do this over the 2 weeks, or if that's an overestimation. But if that is true, that is a huge amount.
But you're saying it's just too much disruption. Well, thank you.
It is, yeah.
Okay, Natalie.
Of course, the majority of people, we all do want to make the world a better place, but we are not the villains in the world when you've got other likes of China and India and bigger.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Natalie.
You know, we've
got to go to a break. We've got to go to a break. Storm, what are people saying about this?
We're going to go to the phones and speak to Liz from London, who thinks they are heroes.
Liz, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You feel they are heroes?
Well, I just want to say, Carol, I love Carol because she's like me. She's loud, opinionated and feisty, but our politics are worlds apart. And Carol, you're such a Sun journalist. You're missing the point.
I'm not a Sun journalist.
Yes, these guys are upper class. Yes, they're privately educated, but it's not the point. They are protesting for the future. And you have to see that. If we didn't have protesters, we wouldn't have had the civil rights movement. We wouldn't have had apartheid. We wouldn't have had the suffragette. I'm not the sort of person that will get up out of my bed in the morning and go and join that march. But thank God somebody is prepared to do it for me and for my children's future.
Liz, let me just ask you a question, in all respect to you here and from what you've just said. What is it you think that they want the government to do that they're not doing? Because just let me read you some stuff that the government is doing. They've committed to zero carbon emissions. We've reduced our carbon emissions by 44% since 1990. In 2018, we reduced them by 2%, which was massive. And now we're responsible for just 1% of the world's carbon emissions. This government is busting a
Well,
steady. Hang on, Carol. From what I've read, if the FTSE 100 was a country, and maybe also companies sponsored or funded from Britain, if that was a country, it would be 15% of the world's emissions. It would be something like the 8th, 9th, 10th, or whatever biggest country in the world. We need to do more. It is not good enough to commit to.
60%.
Carol, you're behind the argument. It's not good enough to commit to net zero. It's when we reach net zero. We're not going fast enough.
I'm thinking you agree with what Matt is saying.
I don't know the optics. I don't know the statistics. What I know is there are two words that I now remember: climate change. And if you have to disrupt society to make people think about it, then so be it. My policy in life is if it ain't broke, break it. So I'm a believer in this. I'm a believer in making people see things, distracting them. I've done it with my kids, you know. Sometimes the only way to show a child how to behave is to do things tough, love, big, and that's what.
But Liz, there's a real disconnect here, because all rational people want to help stop the planet from dying. We know it's dying, and everyone in this country, I don't believe there's anybody
Carol,
we know about
Carol,
it.
do you think, Carol, what are you disagreeing with their methods of doing this?
Why, Carol?
Because they're talking like nothing is being done.
All right, Carol,
Lots is being done.
You're sure of your argument.
And they can't tell us what they want us to do.
You're sure of your argument, but so therefore you'll allow me to ask you a question. So you say something is being done, and therefore we don't need this level of disruption, which, by the way, is minor. I don't support the mistake they made. Let me just quickly finish.
Well, you can't say things, not expect me to.
I don't support them disrupting the tube. That was absolutely crazy. Why would you disrupt the tube? It's completely counter. I do support this sort of disruptive behaviour, and the reason is because although you say something is being done, the United Nations says not enough is being done.
All right, well, let's thank Liz. Let's thank Liz. Liz is on the phone, and Liz, thank you so much. Thank you. No, Liz has got a point. Women had to chain themselves to the railings once upon a time to get the vote. You've got some messages, Storm.
Of course I do. Lots of people talking about this online. Carol simply says, no, disrupting people going to work or getting on with their lives is not productive. So very unimpressed with Extinction Rebellion there. Richard says, it's the only protest I have ever truly backed. It's about time the government made a proper effort instead of just telling us all to turn our kettles off. Janet tweets, totally disagrees, though. She says, I don't back anything that unnecessarily wastes the police budget and costs the country, especially at the moment. If it would make a difference, maybe, but our tiny country against Russia and China, there are far more and worse to worry about.
No. Now, of course, the police have said they are sympathetic with the message, but they still have to do their job. No, you're much younger than us here, well, all of us here. How do you feel about it? Do you think they're heroes or villains?
I'm broadly supportive of Extinction Rebellion for all the things that Matt said, is that they make climate change sexy. It is not a topic people want to talk about. And although, Carol, if you ask people individually, they'll want to do their best to help the climate, nobody's doing it. Nobody is doing enough. No. And the government isn't doing enough. And we can't look at China and Russia because they're going through the same thing we went through years ago and polluted the earth. So we
we're not doing what we're doing.
The example.
Asking for zero.
I'm not doing enough.
You don't know what
I'm not doing enough. You've said it.
That group is asking for zero carbon emissions by 2025. They know it's impossible.
It will drag it closer then, won't it?
No, it won't.
Drag it. That's what protest does. It makes change happen.
They have actually said.
But hang on.
They're anti-capitalist.
I just want to come back to Storm, because this is about future generations.
Of course it is.
It's about our generations, Trisha, as well. It's more urgent than that. That's a misnomer.
But whatever we do now will impact. Yes. We won't be around to mop up.
It will impact us.
We will, but they'll be around a lot longer than we are. So the younger generation, I think, has got a very different take on this, with Greta Thunberg and people
100%.
like they're being elevated. Do you think it's a much bigger issue amongst young people and who feel unheard by all of this?
I think they think about it a lot more than the older generations, and they're more concerned about it. They're willing to sacrifice parts of their life and make things less easy for themselves in order to help the climate, where I think older generations, and I include my generation, the 30-somethings in this as well, are less inclined to not drive their car to the shops, to not take plastic bags, to not do all the things, the small things that we could all do individually. But the big thing is what the government does. The government needs to really step in and tackle this and look at it properly.
And Trisha, may I just quickly say that we should, just as we have respect for the British forces on the ground in Afghanistan who are trying to make a difference, let's have some respect as well for people who are prepared to go to prison to save the rest of us. These are people who are strapping themselves under a vehicle so the vehicle can't be moved out of Holborn or wherever it is.
Well, they know it's right.
Now, I'm not saying that the police don't need to act. You can't live in an anarchic society.
Yeah.
But they have to be punished. But goodness, they're brave to put their careers on the line.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all your calls on this.